From Portland, Oregon, it's time for A Different View, with women's perspectives on the fight to end prohibition again, with Portland Dispensaries examiner and mother of four, Jennifer Alexander, and professional healthcare provider, Iva Cunningham from Alternative Medical Choices, Inc. Now, here's A Different View.
Welcome to A Different View. This is Jennifer Alexander, and we've got Iva Cunningham on the phone. Are you there, Iva?
I sure am. How's everybody doing tonight? Thank you for tuning in.
Nice to hear from you out there in Florida. So tonight, we have a guest there with you in Florida. Her name's Kim. What's her last name again?
Kim Russell. She founded the People United for Medical Marijuana in February 2009. She's been circulating a ballot here in Florida, a ballot initiative in Florida that would allow for the use of medical cannabis. So far, they've got about 50,000 signature petitions around the state, including each of the 67 counties. So hopefully we can shed a little light on their initiative and give them some, some help from our neck of the wood.
Yep, definitely. We're looking forward to hearing from her. And then we were going to talk a little bit about a new press release that came out, I think just today, from the Americans for Safe Access, that they're going to get to go to federal court and argue for medical marijuana. So that's what we're going to talk about in our second segment. And then on our third segment, we'll talk a little bit about the opposition coming out for the legalization measures springing up throughout the country, Washington, Colorado, Oregon. We're getting some official opposition now.
Good. And then our final segment is going to be a little bit about the Anaheim thing, not really cannabis related, but certainly something that we should talk about anyway, I think.
Definitely. And that's the protest going on in Anaheim related to the officer-involved shootings that are fairly excessive recently by some standards. So we'll talk about that in that final segment for sure.
Okay, great.
So you're listening to A Different View. I'm Jennifer. Iva's with us on the phone. We're here every Monday at 8 p.m., and we'll be right back after the break.
It's a long shot, but I gotta try. He hands me a list of all the ailments I can have to qualify. Can't believe what I am reading. This is just what I've been needing. A government supply to get legally high. Weed card, it's what I need. Hardly ever okay, always. But it's not an addiction, 'cause my doctor gave me a prescription. You can get your card for having headaches, bad dreams, or anxiety. Propensity for drugs or alcohol, anorexia or obesity. Too fat, too thin, either way you win. Carpal tunnel syndrome, color blindness, stuttering, tooth decay, fatigue, depression, motion sickness, impotence, or TMJ. You can smoke to quit cigarettes for asthma or your motherfucking Tourette's. It's a dream come true, there's nothing pot can't do. Weed card, it's what I need. Hardly ever okay, always. But it's not an addiction, 'cause my doctor gave me a prescription. Break it down now. Got back pain, need Mary Jane. Can't handle this, need cannabis. Got a stomach ache, got a wake and bake. Have an injury, need THC. Get fucked up for your hyperhidrosis, which is sweaty palms in case you need a diagnosis. It's not a crime, it's 420 time. Weed card, it's what I need. Hardly ever okay, always. But it's not an addiction, 'cause my doctor gave me a prescription.
Support the Russ Belville Show. Text the word Russ to 420-420 and connect with the National Cannabis Coalition. You can also send $10 to the Russ Belville Show right from your smartphone. That's Russ to 420-420.
In the afternoon, if I'm home, I smoke marijuana.
You're listening to Radical Russ on the Russ Belville Show.
Marijuana, yeah. I got my ganja.
Spinach has vitamin A, B, and D, but spinach never appealed to me. But one day while having dinner with a guy, I decided to give it a try. I didn't like it the first time, it was so new to me. I didn't like it the first time, I was so young, you see. I used to run away from the stuff, but now somehow I can't get enough. I didn't like it the first time. Oh, how it grew on me. I didn't like it the first time I had it on a date. Although the first was the worst time.
And now we're back with a different view.
Well, we're still trying to get Kim on the phone. Hopefully she'll be able to tune in. What's the best number for her to call if she's listening to the show, Russ?
The number here is 971-533-7111, and I'll put that up on the screen.
Okay. Well, anyway, we can talk a little bit about it, and hopefully Kim will get into be able to give us a call back. I'm having a little bit of computer problems here myself. So the initiative here in Florida is a constitutional amendment, it looks to be. And like I said earlier, they have about 50,000 signatures as far as they've been able to gather. But I believe they need to get almost 700,000 signatures.
Wow.
Yeah, by February. So they do have a little bit of time, and they do have some rather large cities here. So I think it's not an impossible goal, but in speaking to Kim and to Bobby Tuna, it seems to be a little bit of an uphill battle, somewhat of a challenge. I know that Florida's a little bit different. There's a bit of a stronghold tailor, and just like in any other state, it seems like going out and getting signatures, people are a little bit afraid to be on a list, the dreaded list.
Yeah.
And then you have to remind people that you are already on a list. You're on several lists. So I understand the hesitation, and as Kim pointed out when I was speaking to her that most states have taken 6 to 12 years to get something on the ballot. So it is an uphill battle, but hopefully we'll have some states that legalize and making it easier for the other states that don't have anything.
Definitely. And so they're working for medical marijuana, which last polls I saw were 75, almost 80% of the country is in favor. So it used to be a radical change, but even in a place like Florida, people are coming around. It's got a lot of hope if they get the signatures. I mean, I don't think it would be unheard of to see Florida pass medical marijuana.
I don't think so either. Even though Florida is not really a Republican or a Democrat state, it's definitely an independent state. It's not like Oregon, obviously, where we talk about politics. People are involved in politics. That's not polite conversation,
right?
But people are definitely informed. They're definitely aware of what's going on. I think that. The more that we get out and talk, even if you don't get anything on the ballot, the more people talk to each other about the issues, the more you have the opportunity to open up the dialogue and educate people. So even if you don't make it on the ballot, you can still educate people and spread the news about why this is an important issue to get behind, whether or not you're a consumer or not.
Right. And yeah, like you said, I mean, just being out there on the streets talking to people, trying to get those signatures starts conversations. It starts people talking about the pros and cons and thinking about it as a realistic future. What is their website? Do you have that handy? I think you had it last week, and I don't remember. It's
PUFM.org, People United for Medical Marijuana. And, this is an initiative. It is a constitutional amendment, which is interesting because we haven't seen a whole lot of success with that. But, it's a start. It's opening the dialogue. It's a place to begin. It's a place to, bring the issue to the forefront.
Definitely. And, the thing that I love the most is that around the country, we're seeing different levels of the same conversation. Some states are talking about medical marijuana. Some states are talking about, legalization on the whole, like here in Oregon and Washington, Colorado. Even some states, California, talking about legalization, maybe not having anything on the ballot yet, but they're definitely pushing for it. And then we've got legislatures throughout the country that are changing their laws. We've got federal government, the legislature at the federal level looking at some of these issues, and all of these things are coming together at one time, where it used to be a lot of these things have been tried in the past, but usually it's like this independent little push here at the Congress or here in this state to do this. Now we're seeing sort of a national effort to change laws, start bottom to top,
Well, and I also see that more representatives and senators, politicians in general, joining the conversation, because they're starting to see how some races, as we've discussed before, are being affected by this, and some races have been, won and lost on this issue. And we've had Pam from Pam House Blend on before, and I always compare these two arguments, the gay rights and issues with cannabis. They're civil rights issues. And of course, you won't go to jail for being gay, but you can still have harm. And I think that
there's an argument to be made, and I think a lot of prohibitionists like to make it, that people aren't going to jail for marijuana either. There's many other ways to destroy a person's life and future other than locking them in a cage.
Exactly.
And it's true in the gay community as well as in the cannabis community and a number of other communities, that they're a target and that somebody else's will is being forced upon them.
Right. Well, what my point is that the two issues are becoming, election issues to talk about. They're becoming, swing vote issues. And I think that more and more people are paying attention to, why this is necessary to have this dialogue.
Yes, definitely. I'm looking forward to seeing the conversations popping up in some of these other states. I mean, we know the opposition that we come across, here at the state level, and we see a lot of the opposition that comes across at the national level. But I'm anxious to sort of eavesdrop on the conversations going on in a state like Florida to see how the public responds to it, and if it is, very similar to how our local public in Oregon here has responded to it. I'm looking forward to seeing the comparisons.
Well, and I'd like to see, kind of what other, issues, other states have faced, just because we can learn from one another. I know Colorado has a very good program. The public is very supportive of that program. I think it's kind of interesting that they've made such a quick leap from, medical marijuana to legalization so quickly. But I think that's because they've done a really good job making it positive. So I kind of, I used to look to California as the leader, but now I'm looking to Colorado going, you know what? They seem to have their act together, both within their community and within the public that are of non-consumers, if you will.
Right, exactly. Well, and there are, we often hear that there's supposed to be this legitimate debate that somehow evades us, but the kinds of things that we are hearing coming up in these conversations are valid things that are being addressed by the advocates, so we are having this conversation, even though superficially there's a lot of reefer madness going on and the extremism, but the laws that are being proposed throughout, as we're progressing, show that people are listening to one another. I mean, even some of the less positive things for our community, when you're looking at, like, say, New Jersey's medical marijuana law, the garden state that's the home of the no grower, however it is that Russ likes to say that.
Garden state, no home of grow.
But it illustrates some of the concerns that have been, whether true or not, promoted as the problem with medical marijuana in other states. You don't want your neighbor growing pot next to you in California. They say all these things, it's in their backyard. And so then, of course, as the conversation progresses, people are hearing that and they're responding to that. But they're still doing it. They're still legalizing medical marijuana. So that tells me that the more of these conversations that we have, the more we tweak these concerns to address both sides.
Right, and I think some of the tougher conversations is what about the children? What about the children? What about the children? How do we teach the children? What is the argument, for the children? How do we protect those people, or how do we protect the children? Excuse me. And I think the issue there is, I wouldn't share my beer with a kid any more than I would share a joint. Sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once. I'm never good at that. But I think we need to have those real conversations about what we will do with the kids in a manner in which people who aren't consumers won't be
shocked and offended.
Shocked and ashamed. And then have more fear to overcome.
Right. And actually, that's kind of going to blend well in with our third segment, talking about the opposition to the ballot measures. There's some of those points in there, so we'll definitely be getting around to talking more in depth about that further into the show. But we should probably be going to a break here. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about medical marijuana getting their day in court from the Americans with Safe Access.
Well, I've been chatting with Kim on Skype, so we're going to try to get her on in the next segment so we can still talk about the initiative. Yeah,
definitely. We'll do that first then, and then we'll move on to the medical marijuana in court. So we'll be right back after this break.
Thanks.
Surgeon since 66. Multi-talented, knows all the tricks. Been almost everywhere in the galaxy. Traveled time and changed history. Has a running feud with a green-blooded man. Takes every opportunity to argue if he can. He's one of a kind, says what's on his mind. You might think he's complaining when you hear him say, Doctor, not an escalator. He's a doctor, not a regulator. He's a doctor, not a shuttle conductor. Everybody knows him as Dr. McCoy. He's a doctor, not an engineer. He's a doctor, and not a magician. He's a doctor, not a psychiatrist. And you know that I'm talking about Dr. McCoy. Doesn't like transporters.
Help us legalize it. Text NCC to 420 420 and send $10 to the National Cannabis Coalition.
And now we're back with a different view.
Hello, Kim Russell. Thank you for joining us. Sorry it took us a little bit to get through and get our wires together. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, Kim, you and I have talked a little bit about the initiative, and I've taken a look at it today. It's a constitutional amendment. Can you tell me a little bit about why you chose to go that route as opposed to putting forth like a regular bill?
Regular bills are being introduced every session, but the constitutional amendment, the thing that I like about that is it actually gives patients more rights than the bill. The legislative session, the legislators here in Florida are pretty conservative, and when I was up there lobbying with them, one of their suggestions was maybe if we don't allow people to smoke it, we will be able to get something like that passed.
Yeah, let's not do that.
So yeah, we'll take whatever we can get. But
true. Now, so you've got to get 700,000 signatures, valid signatures by February.
Well, our next deadline is February 1st of 2014.
So a little more than a year.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yes.
Oh, okay. And so you basically are in the beginning stages then.
Well, we've been working on it for 3.5 years, and we just keep on going. We won't ever give up. So as long as we don't have the signatures, we're just going to keep on going for it. But
Kim,
so what have been
Kim, do you have to restart your signature gathering each election cycle, or do they pile up over time?
No, right now we are still grandfathered in under a 4-year verification. But they did change the laws, so it is going to change. We have another year before any of our signatures expire, but then they will go to a 2-year cycle after that.
That's a lot of signatures to get in such a short amount of time. I know I've worked on a couple of campaigns here locally, and the number that we have to get is much, much smaller. I would say almost 10% of that. It's about 87,000 signatures. A constitutional amendment takes a little over 100,000. And, you know, I was thinking it makes sense that you have to have so many more signatures when the population is larger. But on the other hand, I mean, that's a lot of work to get that many signatures, regardless of where you're at. You know what I mean? That good luck to you guys. I mean, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, okay. It is. It is.
Go ahead. Sorry, Kim. I mean, I've got a little bit of a delay, so if I'm talking over you, I apologize. So what have been some of the challenges that you've been facing, gathering the signatures? What have been your major hurdles?
I think our biggest problem is just the stigma that is still associated with marijuana in this part of the country.
Now, it's interesting that you should say that, because I noticed that since I've been here, and I was just in the Keys in December, alcohol seems to be pretty prevalent. Do you think that that's a hurdle, changing people's perceptions about alcohol and cannabis?
Absolutely. Absolutely. People don't see anything wrong with drinking. And, yeah, obviously marijuana is just a complete different ball game. I mean, we have 70 years of misinformation out there that we have to undo. And it's a lot of work, but it's absolutely doable. I know, most of the people here in Florida are liberty-minded. We did vote in Obama, don't forget. So we're not that conservative,
Well, and I think there is a way to talk to conservatives in a way that disarms their argument a little bit. And especially when there's conservatives are completely against Obama. When you start talking about Obamacare and you start talking about government overreaching and getting in the middle of you and your health care and those sort of things. I think that, in Oregon, we don't really have too much of that issue. We have some of it. We don't have too much of it. But I know that in other conservative states that have managed to pass medical marijuana, that has been one of the angles that they've tried is, that approach is like, look, this is really a Republican issue if you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And people don't like to be told what to do. It's becoming more of a states' rights issue than anything, I believe.
I was going to ask him, are you finding that your support often is well informed about medical marijuana, or more of the perspective of it being just a states' rights issue regardless of, do you know what I mean? Like, is it more about the rights or more about the medical benefit?
No, it is definitely more about, we need to educate people. It's definitely more about the misinformation that's out there with regards to marijuana and the fact that it doesn't kill people. It's impossible to overdose. I think once people really hear that and understand that, they change their mind instantaneously. So
primarily you're working with an educational campaign then, trying to reach out to them and share that information?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is all about education. It doesn't matter how much we lobby our legislators if the voters aren't educated and aren't also, behind this thing, then it's never going to pass. It's never going to go anywhere. So that's our biggest goal.
So, Kim, now you and I were talking earlier this week, or last week. We were talking. You're a mother of two small children.
I am.
And you started this mostly for your father, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and he refuses to break the law to get this medicine.
Well, and part of that is because Florida has very strict laws on cannabis consumption. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You can be put in prison for 1 year and a fine of $5,000 for one joint.
I can't even imagine that kind of oppression. Now, you also have fairly strict laws on paraphernalia as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, equal laws. Mm-hmm.
So whether it's a paper or a joint, you're looking at a year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's really crazy. So that's the one great thing that we have going on in our state is the lawyers, the prosecutors are seeing how crazy this is, and they're overworked, and a lot of, there are quite a few instances where people are charges are dropped, especially in medical necessity defense. That is getting won often here in Florida. It has been upheld by our Supreme Court 4 times.
Nice.
So, that's nice. So that's been brought up as a defense, and has won. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That's incredible. Without anything on the book, without anything recognizing that has been a legitimate defense, and people have won.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, it has gone all the way to the Supreme Court over the past 20 years, but in today's court, because that has happened, it is being upheld.
Now, as a mother with 2 small children, this often comes up, especially, when we're talking to other women, who have children. One of their fears is obviously losing their children. And you're not a consumer, of cannabis. So has this been an issue that you've been concerned about being targeted in a negative way? Has this been something that you're, worried about with your children and that sort of thing? No. I mean, it crosses my mind every now and again. For the most part, I don't think they'd want to make me into a martyr. I don't think they'd want to take the press that would come out of it,
Right. Yeah, you often hear, even bad press is good press. And when you're looking for media attention, them arresting somebody who's pushing for the legalization of medical marijuana would definitely give you lots of good free press.
Wouldn't that be great? Free press is always good. So, have you had, how is it that we can help you? I mean, obviously, besides getting the name out there and spreading it out, certainly while I'm here, I'm talking to as many people as who will lend me their ear. But in what other ways can we help Florida get some traction behind this initiative?
Well, everybody knows somebody that lives in Florida, so it's just a matter of getting people informed and mobilized. We did develop a new website called idosupport.org. And it's kind of to loop in, there's only about 3% of the population that are actual medical marijuana users, when the states go to legalization. But we need to get in the other 80% of the Americans that are saying, yeah, we agree with this, we want the laws changed, but are too afraid to speak out about it, So
Right.
we try to give them a very simple platform that can explain it to people without being offensive.
And what are the fears that you're hearing?
Well, the biggest one that we get down here is, it's going to lead to full legalization.
And that's a bad thing.
But it doesn't kill people, So that's the biggest one. And of course, the kids. Oh, but what about the kids?
Children, yeah. Well, and I always use the argument, yes, what about the kids? If I gave a child $20 and I said, go to the liquor store or go buy me a bag of weed, go buy me some cannabis, what are you going to come back with first?
First of all, you'd be a very bad person for doing that.
Yeah. Well, of course, I would never do it.
But it wasn't long ago that it was perfectly okay. Let's be clear.
Right. I'm not advocating that. But I'm just saying that, every kid that I've ever said that to, and I do that on purpose because every single one of them will go, well, they won't give me that because they check my ID. And exactly. There's my point. Drug dealers don't check ID. They don't care if you're 21, and quite frankly, they don't care if they're selling you cannabis or anything else. And kids will start naming off all these different people that they could go and get cannabis from. And then they start naming off, all these other people that can get them other stuff, which should scare the living pants out of most parents.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the whole thing, about cannabis doesn't kill. It is impossible to overdose. What the worst thing they're going to do is fall asleep. But, they're not going to vomit, suffocate on their own vomit, for goodness sake.
Right. Or, I always think back at the story of 2 young children. Well, they weren't children. They were like teenagers in Alaska, and they had gotten inebriated on alcohol and passed out in their car and died of hypothermia. And, I always think, gosh, if that were, cannabis, that would have not happened at all.
Right.
And so I think that those kinds of examples, children, overdose, they get alcohol poisoning, adults get alcohol poisoning, and yet we want to, revere alcohol. You see it on or on commercials with, have a good time, drink alcohol. Oh, by the way, drink responsibly. Those type of things. Don't set well when you start addressing them as real issues. Kim, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. We do have to get to a break. And the website, again, is puffm.org. And idosupport.com, is that correct?
.org.
Mm-hmm. .org.
idosupport.org.
.org.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the work you're doing out there, Kim. We definitely appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for helping put some light on the cause. Hope y'all have a good day.
And we're going to head to a break, and we'll be right back in just a minute.
It's getting very near the end. Good gracious, y'all. Sergeant Pepper's Lonely, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely. It's out
Funky roller ring.
Oh, yeah.
What's happening, Groovy Cats? This is your Funk Master of Ceremonies, Big Daddy, and I want you to join me every Thursday night at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, right here at the Funky Roller Ring. National Cannabis Radio's home of soul, funk, and disco.
Funky-licious.
It's always a party at the Funky Roller Ring, baby.
Lately I try to fall asleep, but I struggle.
Now we're back. A different view.
Welcome back. You're listening to A Different View. I'm Jennifer here with Iva. And
hello, everybody.
I just wanted to briefly give a little shout out to the Americans for Safe Access on this article. They've been fighting for many years, I think 10 years on this, to get the issue of the scheduling of marijuana. Basically, as we all know, the federal government has had a medical marijuana program since the 70s. 17 plus states have medical marijuana now. Medical marijuana has been well proven globally as a valid medicine, and yet we still consider it to be a Schedule I substance. And multiple petitions have gone before the government. They've been repeatedly rejected. And the storyline has been that it's addictive, that it's harmful, that there's no medical use. And so they're finally going to be going...
And neither is Marinol, right?
They're finally going to be going to the United States Court of Appeals to try this issue before the Court of Appeals. And so that's really exciting. I mean, it's been in court before, and it's typically lost repeatedly, and without any sort of factual basis, just politically speaking, it's just lost. They've refused to hear the issue. But this is showing, again, another further step in our progress on this issue. We're going to the Court of Appeals now, which I don't believe that it's ever actually been to the Court of Appeals before. I think it's been headed off before that every time in the past. So that's another step forward. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm not sure exactly when it'll be heard, but they've agreed to hear it as a new press item today. So that's Americans for Safe Access if anybody wants to follow along and see how it's going, safeaccess.org.
Well, it's about time that we got a little bit of attention from the Supreme Court. I think most of us just struggle just to get anyone to hear us. So this is pretty momentous. That's the word I was looking for.
Yes. And since we kind of shifted things a little bit with Kim coming into the second segment, I just kind of wanted to go ahead and jump ahead. I was going to talk a little bit more about that one, but most of it's conjecture at this point. We'll have more as it's progressing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this white paper that came out from the American Society of Addiction Medicine, which, for those that don't know, is Robert DuPont, who is the former drug czar and head of NIDA from 73 to 78. He's just been heavily involved in federal policy for many, many, many years. And he's a psychiatrist, a doctor. And this is their group, along with some other people that are just as high up on the reefer madness scale. and so they've come out to oppose as a blanket opposition all legalization measures that are being proposed without looking at them individually, just sort of the blanket of all of them. And one of the reasons that they give is that marijuana use is neither safe nor harmless. Another reason is marijuana use during adolescence, that it's addictive, that it would promote the public perception that it's harmless at the same time that availability would increase, that marijuana addiction would increase the demand upon our treatment centers, and that it's associated with increased rates of psychosis, and that drug driving would be an increased problem.
Drugs are bad. You shouldn't do drugs. If you do them, you're bad because drugs are bad. Okay.
Oh, that's funny. Anyway, so
alcohol would just fine.
Why this is good news is because this is an early sort of notification, and I think we all probably knew that these were the arguments that we're going to hear. But here is the first formal documented opposition of what we're all going to be facing this year. So now we've got a couple of bullet points of what the opposition's argument is. And one that stands out to me personally, and this is for our community as well as for the opposition, and that's the word safe. I used to work in pesticides, and safe is not a word you were allowed to use. And the reason is because it's sort of a relative thing. It's nothing is safe. Nothing at all.
Nothing.
You can die from drinking too much water. There's nothing in our world that is safe. But when we hear the word safe, we have this perception that we are protected from all harm. So I was always taught not to use the word safe, and I kind of have to agree with that. And I love that the prohibitionists throw out the safe argument, because that's not really the argument for legalization. The fact that it's safer,
they get to define what safe is.
Well, right. That's what I was going to say. The fact that it's safer than alternative substances, that is a valid argument. But I don't think there's anybody running around saying it's safe, legalize it. Although I realize there are a few people saying that, I don't think that that's the argument at large that's being made. I think the argument at large that's being made is that prohibition is worse, that we're spending more money, not that it's going to not cost anything, you know? I think that I was kind of laughing about this on the way over here.
I don't think there's anybody that's saying that we shouldn't have, that there aren't going to be unintended consequences. There may be more people that use cannabis, because as Kim was saying about her father, some people just simply won't use it because they don't want to break the law. And I find a lot of people in that boat that they just simply don't want to break the law.
Right.
So I think some validity to their argument, but to the extent that they're taking it is offensive.
Right, definitely. Well, and I think that's the problem, though, is it was kind of funny. I was doing some research on Robert DuPont today, because the DuPont name is one well known, you know, in cannabis advocacy. The DuPonts were around way back, you know, when cannabis was first prohibited. It's a well-known chemical company. There's a whole long line of DuPont throughout this. So I was looking at a little bit to Robert DuPont, and one of the things that I came across in his history is that he actually used to argue for the decriminalization of marijuana. He never thought it was safe. He never thought it was good. He just thought it was a waste of our resources. And it sounds to me, based on what I read, that the only reason he changed his mind is he didn't want people saying he's in favor of pot. And so even though he was in favor of decriminalization, he didn't want to be the pot guy. So he switched his stance. and that just shows how political this whole issue is. He's held firm to this stance for that long because it's political. He doesn't want to be the pot guy. He doesn't want to be known for being pro pot. He wants to be taken seriously. And in the society of eyes of society at large, if you're in favor of pot, you can't be taken seriously. And that's where the conversations need to be changing. We need to actually be having serious conversations and not just skipping over it and ignoring the potheads. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and I lost my train of thought, that message, but I think, you know, again, this is another conversation that we need to prepare ourselves for. We need to have counterpoints, because this is going to come up. The fact that they brought this out tells me that they do see it coming. They do see, you know, this as being a topic of discussion, and they can't really ignore it anymore. They see this as something on the horizon that they need to, you know, fight hard for, and we need to be prepared. equally as much, because I know that, we tend to be a little bit scattered, and I don't know that we always have our arguments down, but they've given us the blueprint once again.
Right. Now we know what we need to counter. And I think that strategically speaking, this is exactly what we needed, to hear what the opposition is. And I think a couple of them we were aware of. The what about the children and the drug driving? Those are the two, I think, givens. We know we're addressing these issues with these elections. But some of these other issues, now we have a more formulated statement to be opposing. And I think that that's good. We all need to be getting educated on what that opposition is and start being vocal about it.
Well, of course. And I don't see us, being shy or running from the argument. I think a lot of us, who are activists for a long time, were brought to this through anger and frustration of the lies that we've been told, and how many people we've seen in jail for, as Kim was saying, for a joint,
right.
Or, people who've lost their student loans and their lives have been turned upside down, or they've lost their voter rights, or, so they can no longer, they no longer have that one single voice, or that vote that gives them, their only choice to change the system.
Right, exactly. And, Kim kind of pointed this out, and we know this too, that the legislatures, throughout the country are actually looking at these issues. So writing to your legislator is an important step in helping get this conversation going, even if you don't have like a citizens initiative. Because by seeing these efforts, state to state, we're seeing those conversations evolving and progressing and becoming more rational. And so bringing it to your legislator, even in a more conservative state, is likely to have good results, just speaking up and saying that this is important to you.
Well, and I think, when we start talking about the statistics and we start talking about the facts, even the fact that they've brought this out is, realization that our arguments are winning, that people are trying to find a way to make this a solution for both parties. It looks like we're getting ready to go out. Is that what we're trying to do, Russ?
If we have a video that we're going to play, so if we wanted to go to a break now, we could come back a little bit early and have that video. So I think that's a great idea. You're listening to A Different View. We're just going to go to a quick break and come back. When we come back, we're going to talk about the situation going on in Anaheim, California, specifically with a police officer-involved shootings being on the increase recently. And then we'll talk a little bit about a local police shooting as well here in Portland. You're listening to A Different View, and we'll be right back.
Do all right till dark of night surrounds me, and then I think of her, and then I cry. Lord, it's dawn and I'm still here, stoned at the jukebox.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the only way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak to my attorney, Omar Figueroa." Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at www.omarfigueroa.com.
Breaking news right now, chaos erupts after a controversial police shooting in Anaheim, and tonight the tension continues. Officers fire what appear to be beanbags and unleash a canine into a crowd of women and children. We have the disturbing video taken as it happened. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Susie Sa.
And I'm Rob Schmidt. This is KCAL 9 News at 10. We begin tonight with breaking
We're back
news from
with
Anaheim.
A Different View.
Police are facing off with an unruly crowd that showed up to protest.
So what's been going on in Anaheim all started with one man being gunned down by police. The details surrounding this event are rather vague at this point, but he was believed to have been shot in the back of the leg and then in the back of the head while he laid on the ground. A crowd of residents became rather shocked and enraged and wanted to have questions answered, got together, and police began shooting them with rubber bullets and a canine dog. The following day, after all of this happened, another man was shot dead. Again, to much outrage. There has been protests going on pretty much every day. This has been going on for over a week. It started on July 21st. And the more enraged these citizens are becoming, the more brutal the police are in responding to it, which is not helping, because the whole point is that people believe that these officers shouldn't have shot these people dead, but now you're shooting innocent women and children with rubber bullets. You're not raising our confidence any.
Well, and how helpful is it? I mean, I'm watching some of these scenes where the dog is going and attacking people, but you know what? I think it's interesting that you had brought this up to me, Jennifer, and I went immediately to CNN thinking this was going to be huge news. Now, of course, there was a lot of coverage on what happened in Aurora, Colorado, with the shooting in the theater. However, there was a child that was shot. There was, people who were attacked by dogs, who were just protesting. These are unarmed citizens of the United States.
Broad daylight. They were standing on a yard. I mean, there was nothing wrong with what they were doing. They had every right to demand answers for this guy that was killed. There's actually video online, and I almost sent it to Russ, but it's just inappropriate. I didn't want to show it. It was just horrible. But it's somebody standing there with their camera taking pictures of this first man shot. He's shot. He's left lying on the ground. The cops don't even bend over to check to see if he's all right. They just push the crowd back and wait for, the other people to come, the fire, the paramedics, whoever. They don't even check on his condition after shooting him. And the more that you're seeing the news on this, they just keep trying to say, well, he was suspected of being a gang member. He was this bad guy. He ran from us.
Well, suspect doesn't mean that you should be shot in the back.
Bingo. And not to mention the fact that even if he did do all of the things, we have a justice system for that. You don't just shoot people.
This next one is some newer video from, I guess, after these events, people started protesting, and now there's this other video of them dispersing the crowd here. This is from Russia Today.
Russia.
So now I have to point this out. I am not a gun advocate. I'm not. I will never own a gun unless I take up hunting, which I just really don't see happening. I'm just not a gun person. But I definitely believe in our constitutional rights. And I know that there was a lot of backlash against Second Amendment rights, when the situation happened in Colorado just here recently. The man had an AR-15, which is a semi-automatic rifle that he was apparently using in shooting up the theater. And the thing that I've heard the most said is, you don't need an AR-15 unless you're killing a lot of people rapidly. But then I keep seeing our policemen, and you can see it in these videos right here. They're all armed with that exact weapon. And some of them have non-lethal, but some of them have live AR-15s too. And I have to ask the question, if there's no reason a citizen would have it, why do our police need it? They're supposed to be protecting us, not killing as many people as possible. If that's really what's going on.
This now is video of protests, I believe, out in the streets of Anaheim.
Yeah.
Take the streets! Take the streets! Take our streets! Take our streets!
On the sidewalk. On the sidewalk. Please.
At least he said please.
That was polite.
Yeah.
With the gun pointed at your head.
I want you to take notice of this video right now. I don't know if you're watching it, Iva, but what Russ is showing right now is those are all military uniforms. And this is what we're seeing on the streets here. This is Anaheim. I mean, that was 2 truck full of police in fatigues. And
these are American citizens. Bottom line, this is American citizens being used by the police force that we pay to protect the citizens that are shooting citizens, unarmed citizens, unarmed women and children, going into crowds, and all they are doing is a peaceful protest. Why is it being shown on Russia TV and not on CNN, not on our local news? This is a huge story. This should not be tolerated in this country. It just shouldn't be.
Well, and just for the record, RT, Russian TV, they're actually usually one of the more aware media. They've done a lot of good coverage of the Occupy protests and a lot of what most people would consider not the mainstream for us, and it's usually a good source for those sorts of videos that you're not seeing anywhere else. I do find it. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that you made a point about the Occupy, and I did see some reports when I was doing some research on this where they were trying to link this to the Occupy movement, but it really had nothing to do with the Occupy movement.
Well, the only way it has to do with the Occupy movement is the way so many other injustices have to do. If you have a group of people that are standing up, like the ACLU, for instance, stands up for injustice in a variety of platforms, just because the ACLU is standing behind somebody who's fighting a particular cause doesn't mean that they are that cause. It means that they're fighting for civil rights, and Occupy is much like that. In a lot of these places where we're seeing these injustices, Occupy gets involved. This particular set of protests, there was actually 3 different groups that I read about that were specifically formed in the last 3 to 4 years as a result of unarmed people being shot in that surrounding area. One of them's called Kelly's Army. Another one, I forget what the name of it is, but these are groups that came up in defense of one of their friends or family members that had been shot, was believed to be unarmed, or was it believed to be an instance of excessive force or lack of proper medical care after a situation. You know, like I said, with this guy, Manuel Diaz, who they killed on July 21st, they just stood around. Nobody even went to check on him. Once you've shot him and he's down and he's no longer moving, it seems to me that they should be providing some sort of medical assistance to stop the blood flow while they wait for the ambulance. I mean,
he's no
police
longer
are
a
trained
threat
in these things.
Right, exactly. He's no longer a threat. Why weren't they investigating? Why weren't they doing something?
And they were more concerned with crowd control and making sure nobody videotaped it than they were even looking at this guy. I mean, like I said, the video was horrifying, just watching them stand around and not even look at the guy to see what they could or should be doing.
A disturbing report that I'd heard on this when it was first reported is about the cops offering to buy the cell phone video from the people that were watching nearby.
Right, and one wonders, why do they need to buy it? Because if it's evidence, it would be, just subject to subpoena. Yeah. And the only reason for them to buy it is to
destroy it.
I have that video from Portland if you'd like that one.
Yeah, and then I was going to say the other thing that comes up with this story is that right in the midst of this, and obviously it's not exclusive to Anaheim, this is happening around the country, and NYPD has had a lot of excessive force claims against them. Portland police have had the same thing. We've had a federal civil rights investigation going on our police force here for a couple of years. But while all of this is breaking out in Anaheim, we have a similar situation that happens just 2 days ago here in Portland, where a man was shot and killed, and he crashed into an apartment.
Officers on paid administrative
we'll
leave
look at the
this
video
morning
going, then I'll tell the story.
After he shot and killed a man this weekend. KOIN Local 6 reporter Brent Weisberg live for us this morning. Brent, friends and family of 28-year-old Billy Sims, well, they're still questioning exactly why the shooting happened.
Chad, good morning. They are, but Portland police say their officer only opened fire after he felt his life was in danger, or the lives of the fellow officers who were on scene Saturday. He may have felt that their lives were in danger too. Portland police say, though, this investigation is still in the very early stages, and they are urging the public not to jump to any type of conclusion. The officer who shot and killed Billy Sims has been identified as Officer Justin Clary. He has been with the Police Bureau for 10 years. Police say on Saturday they learned 5 people were inside a car that was shot at Southeast 122 and Southeast Division. Police believe Billy Sims shot at the car in some sort of road rage incident. We are being told that there were some young children inside that car and no one got hurt. It also turns out police believe that Sims was a suspect who committed an armed robbery that we told you about last week at a medical marijuana grow site. Officers say in that case a single round was fired and no one was hurt. On Saturday, police spotted Sims, and when they searched his vehicle in North Portland, they say they found a handgun inside.
A lot of pain, not understanding why.
So the one thing I want to point out right off the bat is that this news story, as well as the press release, as well as the story in the Oregonian, everywhere that you see this, they've gone on to list all of these things that this young man was suspected of. Now, notice he wasn't charged in any of these things. He wasn't indicted. He wasn't arrested. So far, all we have is that it was suspected that he was involved in these different criminal matters. Again, just like with the Anaheim situation, if he was guilty of it, it would have been proven. We have a justice system for that, not a gun. I don't know the guy. I don't know the situation. I do know some people that know him, though, that were very upset about his passing. It's hard to say what happened at this point, that the news is right about that part, But it is very disturbing that the police believe that he may have shot at a car, so they just shoot at his car. I mean, what if they were wrong? What if he wasn't the one? It wasn't even like this all occurred in a short span of time. There was a report that he supposedly shot at another car. They found that car later at a 7-Eleven, and when they approached it and he left, they shot at the car. So, I mean, this could have been a different car. It could have been, it could have been a lot of different things, and we don't know. And it's just really shocking to see these instances resulting in so much death. And while they're basically slandering this guy's name, listing all of these different criminal things that he was, quote unquote, suspected of, notice that they haven't said anything about the officer's reasoning for shooting him. And as a matter of fact, they're withholding that information. They won't justify it until it goes through a 3-day process and they get to, tech check with their union rep. Wouldn't it have been nice if this guy got to talk to his lawyer before they shot him? He didn't get that.
If any of those suspicions were founded before they shot him in the back.
Exactly. And it's just really disturbing that society at large is kind of becoming more and more accepting of this. If we think somebody might have committed a crime, it's okay to go ahead and shoot them, and we'll pat the police on the back for it. We need more people standing up like is happening in Anaheim. Unfortunately, it is a situation that takes that kind of public outcry before anything's going to change. I mean, like I said, we've got all of these different police departments that have been reviewed for multiple years, and they're still doing it.
Well, it's shocking to me at how many more we keep having, how the rates of these keep climbing each year. I mean, it used to be someone getting shot, an unarmed person getting shot was, a rare thing, and now it's becoming, something that you hear frequently on the news. I mean, this has got to be about
I can tell you exactly. No, actually, last year in 2011, the city of Anaheim had a total of 4 police officer-involved shootings. 4. It is only July, and they've had 7 this year so far. That's a problem.
That's crazy. So we've had 4 last year, and how many again this year, Jennifer?
7 so far. And 3 of them have been within like the last week. I mean, it's getting crazy, and it's just showing that something needs to change.
Well, and how many people shot? Not rubber bullets, but there was actually more than just one person that was shot and killed, correct?
That was shot and killed. There was 2 people within 2 days. There was the Manuel Diaz, who was the first one that was shot, and that's what prompted the initial protests where the rubber bullets and beanbags and the police dog attacked multiple protesters. The following day, immediately after this major protest, they shot another man, Joel Acevedo, and in both instances, they just kept talking about how these men were suspected of being gang members, again with the slandering their name.
Now, was he a protester?
I don't believe he was a protester. He was just a young man from the community that was shot and killed in an officer-involved shooting. And it may turn out that there was some valid reason for the officers to pull their gun. It's not meant to definitely, judge the police department as being inappropriate in their actions in these situations. The whole point of these protests is to raise the questions and to demonstrate that they were justified, not to delay it to protect the policeman's
and
career.
Let's be clear, we still have the right to protest, to peacefully assemble. We still have our First Amendment rights, last I checked.
Hopefully we do. We're learning really quick how true that might be. Anyway, you're listening.
Circumstances with certain permissions.
You're listening to A Different View every Monday night at 8 p.m. Pacific time. I'm Jennifer with Iva. You can check us out on Facebook, A Different View 420. Our email, if you want to send us an email, is adifferentview420@gmail.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at ADV420. Thank you for listening.
Have a good night, everybody.
Long, long road. It's a long